There we go. What's up, everybody? It's been a minute, but as I said, I would hold to my commitment at just making more content. I feel like it's been a long time, and we have a lot to discuss. So, what I want to talk about today is, as you can see, like on the stream, I have currently discussing Division 5. I want to talk about probably some of my biggest tips I would give to those in divisions 5 through 3. So, oh, I said 1 through 3. Oh, I'm realizing my stream title is messed up. Oh well, I'll edit that in post. But we're discussing division 5 through 3 today, and probably just my 3 biggest tips I would give to those in those divisions to be successful. And then we're going to talk about the NXL EU layout that just dropped recently. So in any case, I think it's going to be a good stream. We'll use the Paintballers video game app here at some point, which I'll have to repeat many times because I always get asked, what software are you using? What software are you using? So, in any case, all right, let's focus in on this. So let's talk about Division 5 really quick. And I have many different ways in which I suppose I could visualize this. I'm going to actually load this in here really quick. Close forever, cancel. I don't really care about that. Oh, I got to lower my gate. There we go. Now you guys can hear me properly. So we're not discussing this layout specifically just yet. And in fact, let me actually just go into the Paintballers. We'll go into the Tampa Bay Open, and then we'll go from there. So Division 5, some of the biggest struggles that I see within Division 5, and really the biggest struggle I see, is almost no matter how good somebody is individually, the biggest issue they run into is that they cannot process information at all. And so they struggle to process what's going on around them, whether that's their teammates, opponents directly in front of them. They can't process like how the game is developing over the course of time. And obviously that's because they're brand new typically to the sport. So there's nothing to harp on about negatively about that. It's just the nature of the beast, right? So if we are to understand those as the biggest issues within Division 5, what are the tips that I would give to immediately addressing those? The first thing I would say is you have to work on what your teammates are doing. You have to pay attention to what your teammates are doing. And honestly, yeah, this is probably the better way to illustrate this. So let's imagine that and we can talk about this maybe from every perspective, but I don't really want to take too long on each of these points. I will end up making a proper like edited video about this, but I also just wanted to discuss these tips, work through some of my thoughts on this, and then obviously add more to the video, and also include more tips there. So, but these are like my top 3 tips. So let's imagine that you are an attacker. So you come out and you dive. Let's say, for example, you dive into the snake. Okay. And let's say the very first thing you do is you come and shoot down the wire. Now, I don't want to get specific to this layout. So just imagine any layout, right? I could seriously do this on any layout. So let's imagine you come to the wire and you start to shoot down the wire. And from this perspective, at least, you can't see anything, right? You have no idea what's going on. And oftentimes what happens when this is the case is that you just don't say anything as a front player, right? And partly because you don't actually have any information to share. Right now, there's a few ways in which you can get information when you do this. So let's say you knew your job was to hold the wire. Let's see if we can go to the Dorito side, because I believe we can see a little bit better down the wire. Okay, I forget that this layout is not one where we can see down the wire. That's okay. Let's imagine that this is not the 50, but this is somewhere further back the field. So you get down to the wire and you start to shoot, and you know this is your job. Okay. Now, in this case, you're not going to be saying anything, and what you're going to be listening for, hopefully, is what your teammates are saying. But this is only one aspect of information gathering, like one of the many, and it's also really subject to like if your teammates survive the breakout or not, right? So oftentimes the fastest way that like front players panic is when they stop hearing their teammates and they have no idea what's going on, right? Or they see their teammate die behind them and they just don't know. So the first tip I would tell you is you need to look and see what your teammates are doing. Okay, so again, let's imagine that we come to this Dorito bunker and we don't really see what's going on in front of us. The first thing you should do after you get to your spot and you have some kind of control down the field, you need to turn and look and see what your teammates are doing. Okay, it doesn't have to be like immediately off the break, because obviously, like, ideally you would know where everybody is shooting. Doesn't always happen in Division 5, but ideally you would know where everybody is shooting on the field, so that way you don't have to do this. But at least within the first like 15-20 seconds of the point, you need to look and literally pay attention to what your teammates are doing. Okay, now there's a few reasons for that. One, it tells you how many people are alive on your team off the break. And two, it tells you where your guns are going. Okay. In future divisions, we will talk about paying more attention to what your opponents are doing. But for now, all I really care about is for us to discuss what are my teammates doing. Okay. Now, there's some other principles that I'm not really talking about right now that are important from Division 5 onward, which is really like you need to understand basic principles of we don't need to have two guns shooting at one person. And for the most part, a lot of those principles are very straightforward, right? I've talked about them in many videos. I can cover them again sometime in the future. But really, if you try to apply like a logical and critical lens to paintball, then a lot of these end up being self-explanatory, right? You don't need two guns shooting one person. Now, that can be done strategically, right? Like if you're trying to stop somebody from moving, and it isn't necessarily the case that you want to have 5 guns shooting 5 different people, right? That's not really how paintball's played, but generally speaking, you don't need 2 guns doing the same job. And really what I mean is, let's say for example, man, there's really not a lot of angles that we can really see this. So let's imagine this isn't really a bunker that I can shoot from. Yeah, okay, this is okay. This is an okay example. So let's imagine that I'm playing this Aztec and I'm trying to stop this Dorito attacker, okay? So I'm the number 2 and I'm just like absolutely destroying the outside of this bunker, okay? Now let's imagine that my number 1 is like standing up tall and he's also doing that. So he's now shooting the outside of this bunker as well. Well, what's the point in that, right? You have 2 guys shooting the exact same spot. It's possible for 2 guns to shoot the same player. Like, let's say, for example, this player is shooting here on the inside, and really, oh my God, it's so funny to have to like mechanically load in this game. So it's one thing if this player decides to shoot on the inside of this bunker, and then this player decides to shoot on the outside. Not saying that that's a great idea either, but that's at least better than 2 players quite literally doing the exact same job. Right now, in this example, you'd want your support player to hold the outside, this player wrapping and then trying to move up the field, right? These are basics of paintball, but from the very beginning, you have to understand what your teammates are doing, okay? Now, let's imagine that we move a spot backwards. Oh, did I pressed a button that like, there we go. I was like, I pressed a button and put my gun away. Now, let's say, for example, again, you are in, let's keep on the attacker, because I feel like this is the easiest to illustrate. So now let's imagine that you can't get up this Dorito side, right? You, for whatever reason, are not able to push past this bunker, and you know your teammate behind you is shooting this Dorito gap, okay? Well, if you pay attention to what your teammates are doing and you see he gets eliminated, that needs to be your cue immediately to take over that job from him at the very least. Just until you can either get support or you can move up the field enough to like find a different angle to stop the guy. But because now you're fighting a 2v1, that can be really challenging. But really the point here is just if you're paying attention to what your teammates are doing, right? Like you look at him and you see, oh, he's shooting on the outside. He might even be telling you I'm shooting the Dorito 1, which would be great. But if he's telling you that and you see that he dies, you now know, oh, there's a gap, right? The guy that he was shooting at is able to move now. Now, as the number 2, let's say last point, worse yet, right? Let's say, for example, you're wrapping, and for whatever reason, your guy behind you decides to start shooting on the inside of the field. Now, on the Tampa Bay Open, there was a lot of reasons for the number 2s to shoot on the inside of the field. So again, this isn't really a criticism of this layout, but let's imagine that he just like decides to shoot on the inside and he doesn't tell you that. Well, if you were on the inside, let's say, for example, you got to this Dorito and you wanted to hold this gap. Sorry, one second. Let's imagine that you wanted to hold this gap. Well, now if you do this and you see your teammates shooting cross towards the snake side as well, you now know I have no guns shooting Dorito away, right? And that would be your cue to take that over. Now, you can dictate where you guys shoot, right? usually happens from the number 2s and the number 3s. It's possible for the number 1s to do this as well. Anybody can. But I just think that the paintball IQ is such that in Division 5, you should probably be telling each other less of what to do and just really focus on just covering the gaps, right? It's hard because a lot of dictating what your teammates do is really steeped in how well you know the layout and really walking it together to understand this is what this bunker does really well and this is what this bunker does really well. Given the fact that that's not very common in Division 5, I would spend less time telling your teammates what to do and just really focusing on covering the gaps where they exist. Okay. Now, that's really the first tip, right? These are, in my opinion, if you do the 3 things that I'm about to tell you for Division 5, you will be successful. You will improve. It's not all of the things that you have to do. There's lots of things you need to do to be successful in Division 5 onward, and they all build on the principle of just basic practice. But I think the tip that people don't really think about much in this division is paying more attention to what your teammates are doing. Okay. The second tip, work on communicating accurately, concisely, and with proper priority. Okay. This is a big one. So let's imagine that you are in this Aztec on the snake side. Okay. You dive into this bunker and you see a dude who you suspect dives into this Dorito corner, and then you have a guy who matches you. So if you dive into this spot, what oftentimes happens in Division 5 is this dude will start to say, back left, back left, back left, the Aztec, back left, the Aztec, back left. And it's just like you're just flooding the air with so many comms that are completely useless, right? What you want, ideally, is to say something, and then it's relayed through everybody else, right? So that way everybody hears it, but you're not flooding the airways with just completely useless information, right? And so it's okay to say back left. It's okay to say the Aztec, but you don't need to keep saying those constantly, right? Not only because you really can't hear very well if you do that yourself, but you also are just preventing your teammates from hearing other calls, and you're not really putting priority like in your voice about what's happening. So what do I mean by that? So let's say now, for example, you for some reason know that the guy's into the 50, right? I think in the Hertz bunker, you could probably get that sense. So let's say, for example, you shoot here for whatever reason you miss, and now he's in the Dorito, or he's in the Snake 50. You would not say Snake 50, Snake 50, right? You would be screaming, Snake 50, Snake 50, Snake 50. And obviously, assuming that your teammates don't know this, right? Like you would have this strong sense of urgency. You know, hopefully you're not panicking by that, but you would want to make sure your teammates know this. Now, in a more ideal setting, there's ways in which you can like communicate this information without your opponents realizing that they know that you know where they are. But at least to start, it's okay to like scream these calls, right? So this is what I mean by like prioritizing certain calls. And so that way you don't just shout, you know, wherever you're calling out, you're not just screaming it repeatedly, because that then makes it very difficult to differentiate where people are. When you get to a higher level, generally speaking, when all 5 players play on the back line, that is not enough of a threat for you to die. Like if you watch pro paintball, you'll realize that like not very often do pro players die out of their bunkers in a scenario in which all 5 players are along the back line. And it's because in order for you to actually get shot in those positions when you're good enough, you have to have really unfortunate timing. And what that means is that if you get put into your bunker and you kind of know your opponent's cadence and how often they shoot, then the only time you die in that situation is if you come out into a ball, right? Even when you're taking heat, there is a way for you to get a different angle or different elevation to avoid getting shot, right? This is the reason why you see people like Tyler Harmon get really low in certain spots, like Harrison Fry does this too. I mean, Chris Shear, lots of people do this where they get really, really low into the Doritos. That isn't because they're not getting shot. That they are getting shot. They're just finding a different angle to see where the paint's coming from or to possibly get shots back in on them, right? So, for example, if I'm gunfighting somebody in this position, I don't need to keep doing this. I don't need to, because this is just asking to get shot, right? We've talked about this before. This is just asking. And certainly you can come up over the top and change your elevation this way as well. Obviously, we've talked about the rule of the rule of the third angle. I'm not going to talk about it here, but it's also possible. I'm not saying lay down and do this, right? But you get it, right? I can't You can get different angles, but it does mean that you can take different angles to own this spot and then control it, right? You're not really trying to kill each other in this situation. When you get higher up in the divisions, you're really just trying to gain control, because you really should not be getting shot out of your bunker from the back line to the back line. You have enough time to react to the paint that's coming at you and dodge it. The only time that you should die in those situations is if you accidentally come out into a ball that's already traveling, right? That you didn't see coming. But if you, for example, if you stare, you could try this at practice too. If you stare at your teammate and he stares at you, and then somebody blows a whistle to say go, and you start to shoot at each other and you can't go back into your bunker, you will find that it's actually not that difficult to dodge each other's paint, right? Anyway, there's lots of drills built around that too. But I've belabored this point. Really, it's just making sure that you are concise, right? If you make a call, it has to be accurate. You can't be looking at this guy and say back left. Oh, I mean the Aztec, right? Like, if you're gonna say something, make sure it's accurate. Okay, don't flood the airways with nonsense calls. And make sure that you have a sense of urgency in your voice when the calls do matter. So again, if you're cross field, you see some guy dive in the Dorito 3, or rather you see a guy cross this gap and you can't see them, you should be screaming, caution the Dorito 3, caution the Dorito 3, right? And make sure everybody knows that piece of information. And when it's like, the home, you can say, the home, caution the Dorito 3, right? There's a cadence there. Okay, the last thing, thank you for these instructional videos. Absolutely, no problem. So then the last thing is work on understanding the basics of paintball. So this is really, you can either rely on your understanding to come from just like playing games and like not really thinking about things, right? Essentially an unconscious, competent person. You can play paintball that way, but if you're watching these videos, you're already taking an effort to make your skill conscious, right? To understand why it is that you're good at what you do, or why, there's some areas in which you struggle. So I assume that everybody that's finding this video is already like making an attempt to be conscious about their skill and why they are struggling. So that's great. You're in a good spot. But really the biggest thing is you have to understand the basics of paintball strategy, so that way you have a foundation to work from that will then help you diagnose problems. So for example, let's say I am holding, let's make this kind of awkward. We can make a really extreme example of this, but okay, let's say this. Okay, so let's say I come to this bunker, I'm the attacker, I've got a teammate right next to me. My teammate's shooting down Snake Way and I'm shooting crossfield. Let's say, for example, I'm shooting this gap, okay? And I get to my spot and I shoot this gap and I don't see anybody crossing this gap. So I'm like, well, okay, if they haven't crossed it, then I really should just keep doing this. Okay. You shoot this, you shoot this. Let's say, for example, somebody crosses this gap. You didn't shoot the guy, and then you get your loader blown off, right? And you get your loader blown off from this dude right here. Now, there are a lot of things that are wrong with this, okay? You might tell yourself when you walk this field, oh, this guy, this Dorito player on the inside can really see this gap. He can stop the home player from bumping out to the Dorito side. But what you ended up dying from was the guy who pushed the middle, and that's going to be the home player, right? He pushed up to this wedge. He shot you in your loader. You did see somebody cross this gap, but you didn't kill him, right? Now, there's lots of problems with this. The first thing is, if you do this for like more than 30 seconds, or you don't really have a game plan as to how long you should do this for, but you just get here and do this, that is like a huge misunderstanding of what you're supposed to be doing in this position. If you're an attacker, your job is to push down the field, okay? You can certainly do a job as a number one off the break, but it has to be in coordination with your other teammates, right? You have to say, okay, what's the context of the match? Are we up points? Are we down points? If we're up points, then maybe I can, go to the corner and hold a crossfield shot to try and lock down the field. That's fine. That happens all the time. But if it's like a 0-0 situation, or there's plenty of time and you're down points, you really should not be holding a job as a one, right? For a long time. That's the first rule. Okay, that's a kind of a basic if you understand why it is that you lose games, right? Their guys got to the 50, right? Their attackers got to the 50, Dorito, the 50 Snake, you got shot. So that tells you we should be attacking. Okay, your number one's jobs, your attacker's jobs is to attack. Okay, your support player's jobs is to support, and the way they do that is typically they shoot to stop the players that are in front of them and to help their teammate on that side of the field push up the field. Now, again, There are some layouts in which it makes more sense for the number twos on opposite sides to shoot cross field, just given the gaps, right? But you have to understand from a basic level that normally what happens is the number one shoots in front of him, the number two shoots in front of him, and the number three supports either side of the field where they can. Like, you have to understand that from a basic level. Because if all you look at paintball is through the lens of this is a good gap and this is a good gap and this is a good shot and this is a good shot, you will not understand why it is that your opponents are beating you, how they're getting through gaps, and whose job it is to do certain things. Okay, you have to operate from that foundational principle. And so really Division 5 is that division where you have to start learning that in order to be successful, because to be honest, like, Division 5 is becoming a lot more competitive. It really is. So it's getting to be people aren't just bad anymore. Like, they're not great, but people in Division 5 are starting to really work on their fundamentals, and they're really starting to understand at a basic level, like, all 5 guns shoot in straight in front of them and you just push the field. Okay? When you try to inject a ton of other strategy into your game plans at Division 5 without understanding that level, then you might just be like inadvertently losing games that you really don't need to be. Okay? So that's my third tip. That's my third tip for Division 5. So to recap, work on processing more information by first starting to understand what your teammates are doing. We'll talk more about that in other divisions, like in Division 4 here in just a second. But first thing is first understand what your teammates are doing to help you begin that information processing. The second thing is work on communicating accurately, concisely, and with proper priority, right? Don't just scream every call. Be concise, accurate, make sure your teammates heard what you said. And then 3 is understand the basics of paintball to build that like framework to work from. Okay. If you're not clear, like, well, he says that, but I don't really know what a basics of paintball, I don't know the basics of paintball. You guys already know, go to my YouTube channel. I have tons of videos on that, from each player's positions to like basic breaking down of layouts, lots of videos on that. So yeah, take a look at those. And like I said, I will release a video on Division 5 with more tips than just 3. These are just my top 3. So what game is this that you're using for these instructionals? This is called Paintballers Playtest on Steam. So it's a playtest. I think you have to opt into it. I'm not actually sure. You might be able to just download the game at this point and then play. But that's what this is. Okay. So that's it for Division 5. Let me change now to Division 4. And we're going to take just a super quick break. Just because I need a drink. So I will be right back, guys. Sure this is maybe. Oh, that like completely locked up. Okay, well, I'm gonna go get a drink. I'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Sweet. So let's now talk about Division 4 and my tips for Division 4. So again, these are just the top 3 tips, and every division from here on out is going to build on those foundations that we talked about in Division 3. If you're watching this after the fact and you just skip to Division 4, you might want to go back to Division 5. Okay, so my first tip is, now that we've started to understand what our teammates are doing as a way to improve our information processing and like information gathering as a point develops, the next thing is to work on, and in fact, let me actually let me create a game with this new NXL Europe. LAN only, private, doesn't matter. 20 minutes, I think, and we're good. So now the next thing is, you need to start paying more attention to what your opponents are doing, okay? For me, the easiest way to do that is to play the number 1 and really, really focus on what the 1 and 2 are doing, okay? Now, you can do this as a number 2. It's just that your responsibility as a number 1 is to, at the very least, understand what the 1 and 2 are doing on your side of the field. And so if you're like really struggling in Division 4 to like have the game awareness to know what's happening, really see if you can play the number 1 position. If there's any reason that you can't, then try to play the number 2. There really shouldn't be any reason you can't play the number 2 at the very least. And I'm mostly just speaking from like maybe there's like physical limitations or whatever, but at the very least, like, you can learn what the guys in front of you are doing by playing the number 2. But really, the number 2 is where you really start to pay more attention to the other side of the field as well, right? The 2s and 3s really are doing a lot to communicate to each other what's happening. So that might be like pretty obvious, right? Like Division 4, like, well, of course, right? I'm going to be running to my bunker and knowing what my opponents are doing, right? They're running to the bunkers usually mirrored to me, or they're diving into certain gaps that I'm shooting. So therefore, I should know what's happening. But there are a lot of other ways in which you can know what is happening in front of you or anywhere on the field, right? So fortunately, this game has refs that kind of give us this point. But let's imagine that I'm shooting down the wire, right? For whatever reason, I'm here. I have not walked this layout. I don't know if this makes any sense. But let's imagine that I'm shooting down the wire, okay? And all of a sudden, I see this ref, and he starts to run towards the Doritos, okay? Now, it might be easy to be like, oh, well, he ran to the Doritos, therefore he's checking the guy that's my mirror, right? He's checking some dude in the Doritos. And depending on how close that ref is to me or how far away it is, might tell me in which Dorito bunker he's in. He might be in the back one, this Dorito 2 or 3, right? But let's say, for example, I'm holding this gap and I'm able to see this gap as well as I'm doing it, right? Let's say I'm shooting here, I wrap, I shoot here, and then all of a sudden I see a ref standing on this side looking at a dude there. And then when I see him leave, there's a period of time where he's running, I don't see him anymore, and then I see him run. Okay, well, now all of a sudden I know, well, at the very least, he was checking the number 2 behind him. Okay, he was checking this dude, not the guy in the Doritos. So depending on if that's happening, there's a few things you can do with that. So if you wrap and you find, oh, this guy's getting checked right now, you can use this information to check off the middle dude and then run and dive into your next bunker. Okay, now that's broadly the case, right? It's always possible that the number 3 is somewhere up the middle. He's holding a gap, whatever the case is. And against higher divisional teams, your teammates will take over those jobs for just a second while your teammate's getting checked, right? Especially if he's not able to shoot. Now, the same is true that if you know, for whatever reason, that it's your heads up opponent that's getting like paint checked and he can't really do anything, you can then use that opportunity to isolate the number 2 and make it a 1v1 and then push up the field as a result of that. Okay. Now, you can bait yourself by doing this. It's always an option, but just be aware that this is another way in which you can get information. It's also possible that this ref comes over here and you see that he kind of walks away, and then you see like maybe the very edge of an outline of like a pod pack here. And what you recognize is that there's a guy who's leaving that bunker. And so you know, oh, kill one out of the can, right? Because you just saw somebody die there. Now, Again, not saying that this is really viable on this layout because it's possible for you guys to drop balls in on each other in this wire scenario. But let's say the guy in front of you is still alive. The number 2 just died, and you know the number 3 is like at home, right? Which would be this little mini W in this case. The other thing you can do is now you can use this opportunity to isolate the number 3, right? So now you put together that there is a gap in the snake side of the field. Okay, I was like, what is happening? So you recognize that there's a gap all the way down this lane. Nobody is in this spot on the field, and that if their home player is here and he's shooting at you, okay, he's shooting at you and he sees his teammates dying, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to try to fill that gap. Well, if you put together that he died quick enough and then you wrap and shoot at the home, or you find whatever way you can do that to take over that job, and you start to put the home in, well, now they're stuck there. And now they haven't been able to take the ground that you just got from them. That's the second thing. You have to work on zone control. If you want to be successful in Division 4 and make it to Sunday consistently and possibly win events, you have to know how to zone control. It is so depressing to watch teams who are like very, pretty decent, honestly. I'm going to fully say it. Pretty decent at Division 4, like in terms of individual skills. Even their communication's not bad, right? If you go to a WCPPL event, there's a lot of teams in Division 4 that are pretty decent, okay? That would give a lot of Division 3 teams runs for their money. But the thing that they cannot do consistently is they cannot zone control consistently. And it's true for everybody on the field, right? It's one thing for your number 3 or even your number 2s to like really be good at zone control, because they're kind of in a position where that makes sense, right? Zone control is absolutely key. Yes. So if you, for example, if you eliminate this guy, okay, let's imagine that there's a dude in this Aztec right here, and then there's a guy in this can. Again, not saying that makes sense. Please, I don't need to keep saying that, but you get it. And let's say, for example, you eliminate your opponent, just straight up heads up eliminate him, okay? And you have a teammate in front of you, so it's not really your job to fill out wide. But the guy that's in front of this dude you just killed can't actually see you. What is the next thing you should do here? As I said, the next thing you should do is shoot this gap. You need to shoot this landing zone for a second, and just make sure that the home player can't immediately fill that spot. Now, a lot of times in Division 4, what ends up happening is people only shoot at what they see. And that's a really hard thing to get over, especially because from Division 5, that's really all that's happening. People are just shooting what's in front of them and they shoot what they see. But Division 4 is where you need to start shooting where you think people are going to be, and that's like the very first step into understanding what zone control means, okay? Zone control is not just shooting a gap that no one is eventually going to go through. Zone control is about denying your opponents from taking the ground you just got from them, right? So let's take another example. Let's say you get wide. Let's say as the number 1 attacker, you get wider than them and they get stuck for whatever reason, that you kill their wide guy. Let's say you kill their attacker off the break and they're stuck in this can and they're stuck in the back center. Okay. Now as the number 1 attacker, your number 1 priority is to survive, push up the field, and then get kills. Like almost exactly in that order. Okay. There's some other paintball is like chess. Absolutely. There's some other scenarios in which like you might prioritize getting a kill over your life. Those are really, really specific situations. But generally speaking, your first priority as a number 1 attacker is to survive, push up the field, and then get kills. Okay. So if you come out here wide and you hear Lucy, which for most teams means kill out of the left side off the break. So they weren't anywhere specifically. You hear Lucy and you are, for whatever reason, able to get this control on this guy on the outside. You're in a really, really strong position now. Okay. You are in an incredibly strong position, because now you are stopping them from getting wider than that can. Now, on this layout in particular, they could go here and take this inside route, right? I'm just saying, generally speaking, this is what I mean by zone control. It needs to happen from all 5 players on the field, not just the number 2s and not just the number 3. It needs to come from everybody. So when this guy takes over this job, now is when we work on the principle that we started in Division 5, but now bring it to Division 4, which is be more specific with your callouts. Okay. So now what you can say is not just the can, right? We'll just call this the can. Instead of just turning to your teammate and shouting, the can, say, Lucy, I've got the can. I have the zone, right? And then you tell your teammate, hey, get up the Doritos, whatever the case is, right? Because now what's happened is you have such a strong zone control in this situation that your teammate behind you really ought to become the attacker. Right now, not always the case. It's possible that your teammate can do the same job. So for example, in this layout, he actually can stop the zone as well. Like he can hold this as well. Both of these jobs, like both of these bunkers, end up having to directly shoot at that player to stop him. But in many other cases, you'll actually not see that player, and all you'll see is like a gap. So let's say, for example, this bunker was shifted out a little wider, and instead of me being able to see the can directly, which I can't, I would actually just be able to shoot this gap and do the exact same thing and stop him from getting out wide. Again, he could go up to the wedge. We're not talking about that here. We're just saying that, like, if you understand this is what I mean by zone control, okay? You don't have to directly shoot at somebody to stop them from getting out wide. This is a superior zone control than is this shot right here. Okay. Now it's also true that, like, even if sometimes you can shoot this zone and your teammate behind you cannot, and therefore it would behoove him to become the attacker, right? Because you're the only dude that can see this shot. It's also true that, like, sometimes you want a point to go fast enough that, like, you don't necessarily take over this job and then have your teammate get into a spot that takes it over and then you push. It just kind of has to happen quick enough for everybody to understand what's happening. So if you say Lucy the can, I've got the can, and then you, like, get up from your spot, shoot the wrap shot into the home, and then run and dive, for example, your teammate behind you needs to be in a position very quickly to stop them from getting wide, whatever that looks like, right? It's possible that maybe it's from here. Let's imagine that you couldn't see this dude. It would need to be this shot. Whatever the case is, you need to imagine there's this huge line being drawn from wherever they are. Like, we'll illustrate this from Guns Up really quickly. This is not, oh, this is the same layout. Look at that. It's almost like I planned that. So again, we're looking at the scenario in which they die out of the snake side. Was that what we were looking at? Let's take a look. No, we're on the Dorito side. So let's say you kill their wide player somewhere over here, and they have a guy right here. The first thing you need to identify is that this line has now been drawn, and you need to do whatever you can to prevent them from crossing this line. Sometimes you can do that from the same bunker. Sometimes you can do that from other bunkers. Whatever the case is, you just need to find it and do it quickly. Okay. In an ideal scenario, you could do that here, right? Again, you kind of lose a little bit of visibility, which isn't great, but you control the zone. And the reason why this isn't great is because you don't actually stop, like, the number 2 and the 3 from pushing up the middle and, like, baiting your teammate. So, like, let's say, for example, you're here, you're shooting this gap, your teammate gets all the way to the Dorito 2, and he's like, okay, cool. We've stopped them from going wide, but now all of a sudden you run up here and you get blasted by some dude in the turret or even some guy in this 50, right? Because you lose visibility in the middle. So there's lots of principles that we could build on here very quickly that has more to do with, like, understanding paintball strategy. But if you want to be successful in Division 4, those are the things that I would immediately draw your attention to. You need to, just to reiterate, pay more attention to what your opponents are doing and start with those straight in front of you. We'll talk in just a second about crossfield. But pay more attention to what your opponents are doing. Like, okay, a guy died in front of me. That means it's a 2v1. That you need to do that. There's a lot of people who don't do that because they don't act like they just got a kill in front of them. And more specifically, okay, we just killed their support player. It's a 2v1, and their wide guy can't actually see me anymore, right? And a lot of layouts you guys will know, especially if you're an attacker, you'll know that, like, if the number 2 dies right here, and this case isn't really a great example because you could come out wide and shoot somebody. But in other scenarios, the number ones can't actually see each other a lot of times, especially in the Doritos. So this gives you an opportunity to wrap on the middle and to get control of the inside and really isolate the middle and just completely ignore the attacker in front of you until you push down the field to kind of match his positioning or to get down the field faster than him, right? And so that's it. That's the first thing. Pay more attention to what your opponents are doing. The second thing is be more specific with your call outs. And what I mean is start calling each other by name. Say, hey, John, I've got the corner. What's stopping you? Those types of conversations we hear all the time. Be more specific about what you're doing. Tell your teammates who you're shooting at as opposed to just where they are. And then the last thing before I tell you a couple drills is master zone control. We spent a lot of time talking about that already, so hopefully that makes sense. But there's a drill that we used to do a lot when I was playing with Bro Army, which was that we were not allowed to call out where our opponents were and which bunkers they were in. We were only allowed to say what we were doing. And that was a way for us to, I mean, certainly it's not like super strict, right? But we were trying to really drill into our heads that like we are not allowed to get in our spots and just start shouting bunkers. And the way that you get over that is to have everybody be under the impression that when you get to a spot, you have to start saying, I'm shooting the, we called the Dorito corner Delta, but it would be like, I'm on the Delta, I'm on the Delta. And then your number one would be like, okay, the can is stopping me. The can is stopping me. So now you know where two people are without actually having to call out just the bunkers itself. You're describing to your teammates what you're doing, which is helping to inform them where your opponents are. Okay. So that's a really great drill. I highly recommend you do it. And then the last thing to this is just how do you get better information about what the other side of the field is doing? And that comes from a few different pieces of information. Aside from, you know, seeing the refs running over to check certain players, aside from just like literally looking at straight ahead of you to see where they are, there's a few other ways in which you can gather information. And I'm going to pause to say that in just a second, but let me read chat really quick. Love this video so far. I don't get to play as much as I'd like to, so this is super helpful to keep in mind, especially that chess analogy. Scar, I love chess. Absolutely. Same question. What is this game sim? Oh, I should have typed. Can somebody type in the chat? This is called Paintballers Playtest. 2 words, Paintballers Playtest. It's on Steam. So how do you get information about what's happening on the other side of the field? It's a little different for each position, but for the number one, it is just simply honestly looking, right? So like you can still hold the wire in this case. Let's imagine that I guess I could do it this way just to illustrate the point. But like you're shooting down the wire with your hand, with your gun in your proper hand. This is not proper, but you're shooting down the wire and then you just turn your head and every so often check to see what's going on, right? Every so often you just check to see what's happening. Now, you do have to be careful. Sometimes you can catch strays doing that, especially if you know that like this bunker is very prone to being shot on the inside. You do have to be careful about that. But there is also often times where if you can sense that you're getting heat on the inside of your bunker, if you walk a layout well enough, you can know where that shot's coming from, at least to a reasonable degree, right? It may not be that, like in this case, you may not know if it's coming from this mini wedge or this wedge or the what is that, a wing? You may not be able to tell exactly, but you can certainly say, hey, snakes cross on me, I think it's the wing, or snakes cross on me, I think it's the wedge, whatever the case is. You can start to talk to your teammates that way and help them understand like where it's roughly coming from, and then your teammates can work to find that information for you. But as the attacker, it's just as simple as look on the other side of the field every so often. Do not, I repeat, do not look and just randomly start shooting that way, okay? The amount of pressure that people let go of, or like that they just stop applying because they decide to just randomly shoot on the inside, is so frustrating, and it happens so much in Division 4. So much, even among the teams that I coach, where I tell them at practice, you are not allowed to shoot cross field. All 4 of you, excluding the middle guy, the 4 players on the field are only allowed to shoot what's straight in front of them. Even doing that, it is so difficult to get out of the habit of randomly deciding to shoot cross field. And it's because when players get to their spot and they're stuck, they can't move, and they're not winning what's straight in front of them, they're like, well, I may as well shoot cross field. But the problem is that you give up. You just give up the attack in front of you. And there's so many opportunities to take over the lane that's in front of you by just simply waiting a second and then coming out, right? If you do that, it makes your opponents way more scared to just like immediately start pushing, because they now know at any moment this guy could snap shoot at me and I could die, right? Okay, so as the number 2, how do you get this information? There's a few different ways. First of all, wrapping, as far as like, you know, if you control this guy in front of you, the number 1 can't see you directly. It's okay to wrap and see what the number 3 is doing on the outside. And it's especially safe to do this because you have, like, if you just take a picture of what I'm seeing right now, you have a pretty decent idea of what's happening in front of you, right? Let's say, for example, they're in the can, and then they're in this this delta right here. And let's say, for example, you have been destroying this delta for the entire point, and you've every so often been wrapping on the guy in front of you to just keep him honest, and you know that they're both in those spots still. It's totally okay to do this, wrap, and then wrap even further to just get a glimpse, just very quickly, to see what's happening up the middle. And what you're looking for is either a body moving, or a bunker shaking, or paint coming from somewhere on the inside, okay? Now, if you look at your teammate, let's say, for example, your teammate's right here, and he's shooting down the wire, and he's just getting destroyed on the inside of his bunker, like this. just somewhere along, and you're seeing paint ricochet, you're seeing paint break, and you're just noticing that as you're holding, like you're shooting at the delta, you look over, and you're like, oh, dude, my teammate's getting shot somewhere from the inside. Depending on the angle of where that paint's coming from, you could put together roughly where you would need to look to figure out where that paint's coming from. Or you've walked the layout well enough that you know where that paint's coming from. Because you know, well, the only bunker that can actually shoot that shot is this one. So that is what if you do that at Division 4, you are so ahead of the curve if you're able to put together that piece of information. So again, if you see paint flying on the inside, it could either cause you to, shoot and then get a better example, get a better eye. So if you look at like wrap just really quickly and you see paint flying high like this over towards your teammate and it's not coming from the home, that tells you it's a snake side crossfield shot. So then you could turn to your teammates, turn your head and say, hey, somewhere on the snake is cross. We say turtle. A lot of teams say turtle. We say, hey, snake is turtle. You have to be careful because you're not specifying the bunker, so you wouldn't want people to assume that it's like the attacker in the snake shooting cross. But you could, depending on the angle, like let's say, for example, you suspect that it's coming from somewhere over here. That's probably the number 2. So you could say, hey, the number 2 on the snake's cross or whatever, right? The support's cross. However you wanted to communicate that information. Again, if you start to hear like paint breaking very closely or rather really loudly, then you could also put together like this guy's really close to me. So let's say, for example, you're in the Doritos, you're attacking, you don't really know what the guy in front of you is doing, but you know he's alive. And now all of a sudden you start, let's say you're in this bunker. And now all of a sudden you start to hear essentially what this would sound like, which is, sorry, I know we don't need this, but. And you're just like, oh, that's close. Like there's somebody, and worse yet, it could be this. That's going to be really loud, but you get the idea, right? This shot right here is going to sound different than this shot right here. Okay. I mean, they sound objectively different, but you as the player can know, oh, that guy's close to me. He's probably in the 50. And obviously, depending on how quickly that paint's hitting you and how loud it is and how often it's breaking, like if it's bouncing, you might think, oh, it's a little bit farther away, whatever the case is, right? So those are there's tons more ways to understand what your opponents are doing. I've actually talked about this a lot in various videos, but again, another subject for another time. But hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have any questions about either Division 4 or Division 5 or 4, leave them down in the comments below. I'll answer them. There might be even future videos if you have more questions. But that is it. That is it for Division 4. So now we'll go on to Division 3. I'm going to take another quick break here. It's especially helpful if people are like scrubbing the live stream to figure out like, oh, I only want to watch the division that's relevant to me. So we're going to take a quick break here and then we'll be right back. Okay. See you in just a sec. Okay, so let's now talk about Division 3. We'll change this text here. We'll change it to, let's see, what makes sense. I like it. Let's do this. Okay, so now on to Division 3. So I honestly, the most helpful thing for me when talking about Division 3 is to first, and this is true for every division, but it's helpful to first start by understanding like what each division does well, or like kind of the hallmarks of each division. So for example, I would say the hallmarks of Division 5 and like really what you observe in Division 5 is that there's a lot of individual play, a lot of mistakes, but you start to see like the teams that emerge or the players that emerge are those who really are putting in the work, right? That's what you just see it. And so it becomes more obvious. Like typically Division 5, it can be like, oh, that player's really good, and therefore they're going to win because of that, or whatever, right? If you get to like the finals, semifinals, that's where more players on a team are good. But like at least in the prelims, if you don't know a team at all, you can be like, oh, that team's going to do well because that player's good. Division 4 is where you start to see a bit more coherence among the team, right? You start to see a lot more team play, still a lot of individual play, still a lot of unsupported moves, but generally speaking, you're starting to see more teamwork, which is great. And really the teams that do really well, honestly, are the ones that just do the basics well, right? Zone control, communication, pushing up the field when you can, right? Those basics really help teams be successful. And obviously, you know, the teams that are winning events is, you know, you have a good coach, you have good game plans, but it really just comes down to just like executing solidly. Okay. On the basics. What you see in Division 3 a lot is you see now essentially what happened in Division 4, but cranked up by a bit. And it's really, really aggressive in many cases. Like Division 3 is a fairly aggressive division. I would actually say it's more aggressive than Division 2. But that's their downfall oftentimes when they go from Division 3 to Division 2. And that's because the teams that emerge from Division 4 that either win events or just move up because of points and play Division 3, those teams were successful because of their aggression, right? If you imagine to do all of the things that I described, sorry, I'm just got to respond to this message here real quick. If you imagine, you know, the teams that are successful in Division 4 that then move up to Division 3, they all they did was they did the basics well, and they started ramping up the pressure and the like speed in which they move out of their bunkers because of it. And so when they enter Division 3, they're generally pretty aggressive. They sometimes might be leaning harder into their individual play, right? Like if, for example, you have like a really good snake attacker and he's just like he's really fast, he gets to a spot and he wins the wire. And let's say, for example, he's a good gunfighter and he just starts winning every heads up fight, then you start to rely on your snake guy to just win everything for you on the snake side. And that means that you don't really rely as much on like working into a spot. And so you kind of miss that. But in Division 2, you can't do that anymore. Division 2 is really where you have to use your teammates' help to work into positions, or at least your ability to win the snakes just straight up that way becomes less and less likely, right? So you have to rely on your teammates to help you work into spots. You might have to play slow at a certain position or whatever, right? So Division 3 is hyper aggressive, lots of individual play, but it's what helped them get there, and oftentimes what helps them get to Sunday. But the teams that end up winning in Division 3 and then moving on to Division 2 are the ones that do at least these three things. So the teams that win, they identify and punish mistakes that their opponents are making. And why is that the case? Well, because as I said, in Division 3, a lot of times teams are just, what ends up happening is, like if you think back about this scenario that I described earlier, where let's say you get to this Dorito corner, you're the attacker, you kill one body off the break, so it's a 5-on-4. In fact, I think this is probably better illustrated in Guns Up, so let's do it here. So you get to this spot, okay? Gotta make sure this tool's right. It is. So it's a 5-on-5 breakout, and you're in this position over here. Okay, now let's say you kill the wide guy. So again, 5-on-4, and what you do immediately is you wrap right away, you shoot this guy in, and then you go. And then you do the same thing. You wrap, shoot a guy in, and you go. Wrap, shoot a guy in, you go. Now, in Division 3, that happens all the time, and it usually means that people get up the field very, very quickly. Okay? And it's because their opponents can't stop the bleeding very, very effectively. They don't know the gaps to shoot, or the gaps they are shooting, they're just not shooting it accurately. So you just kind of like go through those guns. So what ends up happening then is this guy gets to this bunker and just wraps and just kills everybody right after, right? You see like 30-second points all the time in Division 3, especially in prelims when there's teams that have been doing this for a long time in Division 3 and those that just got there. So they're not used to the tempo. They're not used to the speed and how things are played. And this is because teams do not know how to slow down points. Okay, but we'll get onto that in just a second. But the thing is, if you want to, but what ends up happening, let me finish my thought here. What ends up happening is against better teams in Division 3, or when you start to scrimmage Division 2 teams, is you start to send like a middle guy early in a point who just lives, and then he gets here and he waits and he baits this gap. So that way, even if your opponent or your teammate dies in this situation and you end up playing a 4v5 from your perspective on this right side, well, now all of a sudden, well, I know their Dorito player has a tendency to push up the field like immediately. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this gap. I'm not going to even shoot paint. I'm just going to wait. And so then he starts pushing and all of a sudden, boom, you just shoot him as he runs through your gap, pretty much willy-nilly. So then when that starts to happen, Division 3, I feel like a lot of Division 3 teams start to panic. And what they do is they just immediately stop pushing. And so they don't really know. What they don't know how to do is they don't know how to get up the field until they get to that point where you have to play cautiously. So they don't know how to get to a spot fast and then really make sure that they have the information they need to push up the field, even if they're not getting shot at. Because all the Division 3 players have done up until that point, when they've gone from 5-4 and up into 3, is that if I'm not getting shot at, I should be pushing down the field. And you see that all the time. But when you get to Division 2, you start to realize just because I'm not getting shot at doesn't necessarily mean I'm safe. And so how do you protect yourself from just running through gaps that people are holding, or just randomly taking a ball that was on its way because X, Y, and Z reason, right? And the way that you do that is you identify mistakes, okay? Now, what do I mean by that? So what I mean, thank you for doing this. I'm new playing D5. Your content helps so much. Thank you again. Absolutely. Thank you for joining. Thanks, Jacob. So the way that you do that is you put together, like, you just have to know if somebody isn't looking my way who should be, that's a mistake. All right. So let's say, for example, let's make it pretty straightforward. Let's say you're on this side. Okay. You guys are over here and your opponents are over here, and you kill the wide guy. I'm just using the Dorito side. I'm sorry. Hopefully it's not boring, but you kill the wide guy. So again, it's a 5v4. And let's imagine that this dude off the break is shooting crossfield. And the way you know that is that let's say you're the number 2, as the number 2, you call Lucy, and then you saw this dude run to his bunker, but you're not taking any heat your way. And in fact, if you wrap even a little bit, what you can find is, like, in this bunker, and specifically, if you're shooting right here and you're not taking any heat, and all of a sudden you start to see paint coming from the inside of the bunker cross field, then nobody is shooting at me right now, except for maybe the home player. Okay. Now, if you walk the field well enough, you will know who can see you when you're playing this field. So let's say, for example, your breakout is that you dive, your number 1 attacker dove here, and then your number 2 support dove here, and you get Lucy. This dude is shooting cross field, and let's say the home player from the other side of the field is shooting right here. Okay, he's just trying to, like, shoot this Dorito. Well, if you're in this position, you're going to see that paint. You're going to see that paint falling right here. But what this gives you the opportunity to literally, and again, this is assuming it's in the breakout, right? We're talking about the breakout here. You stand up, you look in the inside, and you see no one's shooting at me. You run, you dive, and now all of a sudden, you're good to go all the way, dude. You go all the way to the 50. Your teammate's still shooting at the can, making sure he doesn't go wide, right? He's still shooting this shot. Can't go outside of this spot. So then you come here, and all of a sudden, boom. You shoot him, wrap, shoot the home, shoot the guy. Now you just start pushing up the field and start shooting everybody cross field, right? That's how so you were still aggressive, right? You're still aggressive by Division 3 standards, but you did so intelligently. Because if alternatively, what happened is, let's say, for example, you come out to the wide spot, okay? You're here, your teammate dies behind you, and you end up killing this guy. So it's essentially a flip-flopped situation. Okay, so we go back here. Actually, I should have done this a long time ago, guys. Being able to swap between these two is just awesome. So hopefully you guys are enjoying this. So let's say, for example, the guy in front of you is dead, but the guy behind him is stopping you, right? So, for example, he's shooting at you right now. Okay, you two can see each other, and if you try to play on the inside, he can still kind of shoot at you. So this doesn't really mean that you should just try to immediately get out of this position. What this means is, like, hey, I need somebody to come out and fill to help me, or I need to find a way to, like, take over this job, like, stop the bleeding wherever I can possibly to then take over this position. So if you are good enough, which really is a big caveat, but if you've worked on your accuracy enough, This is how you take over this position long enough for your teammate to come support you. So again, we're in this scenario where your support player is dead, but your heads up opponent is dead, and then the support player behind him is stopping you. What you do is, again, in the breakout, you dove here, you're starting to take heat on the outside, and it's kill one on either side. You come on the inside, you shoot, you wrap, you shoot this, and take it over. Now you're good. Okay, now you're like, hey, somebody come over to the Doritos or whatever, right? You can call whatever. Hey, John, over here, come here, I need help or whatever. Whatever you guys want to say, right? We don't have a call for that. We just talk to each other. So we say, hey, I've got the can. I need help. I need help pushing. So your teammate in the home, let's say, for example, he was shooting Snake Way. You hear, oh, one, kill one. You hear Lucy, oh, one, kill one. Hey, John, I need help. And you're like, oh, shit. Oh, my teammate's dead? Okay, cool. You're like, hey, the can's the widest. Okay, so now the home player now knows, because again, remember, in Division 4, you worked on being concise. So you said, I'm on the can is the widest. So now this dude knows, oh, okay, I don't need to just shoot this gap randomly. What I need to do is start shooting here and shooting this, okay? I'm good, run out, come here. I dive into this bunker, and now I take over this job. And I'm like, hey, I got it. So now this gives this guy the opportunity to push. So now he's already controlling this dude. And this is assuming you were able to do that. But now, instead of holding this job, it's like, okay, it's time to push. Now, you have a few options. Your home player could become the attacker if you want. It's up to you. The risky part about that is that if this takes too long, you're going to have a lot more paint coming in from the snake side killing this dude for free, right? Especially if you make this move completely blind. So if you have no idea what's going on the snake side, coming here and sliding in, it's possible that they're already up on the snake 50 and they're just about to blast you, right? Whereas if you're in this position and you're wrapping, you might actually be taking heat from the inside. In this case, you would die. But like, let's imagine the snake 50 cannot see you. If you're in this position, but you know you're taking heat on the inside, it's actually safer for you to hold the wire like this and for your teammate to stay on the outside as well, hiding himself from the snake. And so then from this position, you would then shoot, wrap. Okay, I've got the home. I've got this. Now you can make this move if you do it quick enough, and you can dive. And as you guys know, if you get further up the field on the Doritos side, oftentimes you guys can no longer see each other cross field, right? So I've now dived into a spot where I'm fairly safe from the snake 50, and I can still control this side of the field, right? You don't want your teammate to just follow behind you willy-nilly, especially if he hears now, 50 snake. But hopefully you get the idea, right? This is controlled aggression and pushing up the field, but while punishing mistakes, okay? The mistake in this situation is this guy gave up this control. Now, there's a lot of context you can inject in this, and I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole for too long. I'll read chat here, guys, in just a second. But let's see. Steven, this is fire. You really genuinely need to do these consistently. You can for sure ultimately monetize this. It is monetized. I just don't do it enough. My wife gets mad at me for that. Why wouldn't the home guy be the attacker because the corner guy draws the guns wide? No, it absolutely is true. It honestly depends on when this happens. So if this if this all breaks down at the beginning of the point, let's say from the breakout to the early game, which is really like the first 30 to 45 seconds of a point. If that happens, then you absolutely can become the attacker. But if it took, like, if, for example, and even 30 seconds is kind of long, but if you enter the mid game, which is usually after, honestly, the first body stop to drop and you can't push anymore freely, that's when you enter the mid game. And the only reason why I say it's not necessarily the case that the home player becomes the attacker is because by that point, it is absolutely possible for people to have moved up the field quick enough to then start shooting for those gaps. And so if you're not careful and you, for example, take a huge bite, this happens a lot. You take a huge bite up here or you're trying to make this move, you could easily die from somebody crossfield shooting at you. Whereas if all these guys do is shoot heads up and wrap and go, there's a lot of times where you're far enough away, right? This distance is far enough away that for this guy to shoot the Dorito player, he has to have shot paint already for that to kill you. So you would see this paint coming cross field and you'd be like, oh, I can't move. Somebody on the snake side shooting cross field. Whereas if you start making those moves up, like in this position here and even here, this guy's a lot closer. I know it doesn't seem like it, but in order for this dude to actually get shot, the difference between this paint coming here versus this paint here is quite different. Hope to see you at WC. Dude, I won't. Justin, I wish, man. I'm going to miss you guys. I won't be at WC this event. For whatever reason, the commentary thing that I was going to do fell through. And Desert Edge, well, I'm not trying to like make it a thing. Desert Edge, I didn't reach out to Desert Edge. They didn't reach out to me. I think I had made it very clear last year that like, hey, If I'm going to be coaching, I would need to be compensated for my time, because it's just a lot of time away. And so I don't think they were against that. They just haven't reached out. So and I honestly, I'm okay not to travel as much. So I wasn't trying to like immediately find another coaching arrangement. Even though I am going to miss, I really wanted to see Chino. I wanted to see the SC Village field. So in any case, it's totally possible for this guy to become the attacker. You just have to be really careful, because when this guy starts to make moves in the mid game, it's also possible for somebody to be up the middle. And again, his gun is much closer to that guy than the wider dude is. Now, if this guy's taking a bunch of heat, like let's say for example, he is holding this dude, he's got this guy, but the home player is stopping him and he can't move, it's absolutely the case that you would want the guy behind you to become the attacker. So let's say for example, this wide guy here is stopping you, and this guy's also trying to shoot at you, and this whole zone is essentially not being touched. Then when this guy pushes out to the can and recognizes the situation, he would definitely become the attacker here. So it definitely is. Either option's fine. You really have to identify the reasons why you would choose one over the other. Okay, so we talked about we talked about those three things. So identify and punish mistakes. And really that's the biggest thing. Is like, let's say off the break, your home player, let's say you're the home player, and you see off the break, for whatever reason, it looks like there's like 4 guns looking snake way. Okay. Now, typically, especially if you guys play WC, this is pretty common to hear. But WC, oftentimes you'll hear a call that's kind of indicating where the guns are, and you'll hear either 212, 32, 23, whatever. And what that really means is that like 212 means you have 2 guns one way, 1 gun in the middle, and the other 2 guns the other way. And this is like this is essentially a call for like, this is standard play. Okay. 212, 2 guns heads up. The home player shooting either side, doesn't really matter, or you don't know. Okay. 3-2 is where you have 3 guns Dorito way and 2 guns snake way. This is essentially the 2-1-2, except you know where the home player is shooting. Okay. Now, generally speaking, this is also assuming that the number 2 heads up to you is shooting in front of him, right? And then the opposite is true, right? 2-3 means, in this case, the home player is shooting snake side, because there's 3 people snake way and only 2 people Dorito way. So when you can certainly use that to at least help identify where the home player is shooting, but there's also some other calls that you could utilize. So for example, let's say that every single point, you know that their number 2 on the Doritos side likes to shoot crossfield. Okay. So then you have 1 gun that runs out wide. He's the guy who always runs with his gun down. And then let's say that you have 2 guys on this side who are very much so in a gun ready position looking to shoot. And then you see the home player lining up here as well. This should be a 2. I'll just redraw that. So this is the number 1, the number 2, the 3, the 2, and the 1. And all 3 of these players right here have their guns like essentially ready. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Ready at the start box to bring up and shoot. If you see this is a 2. This is essentially 4 guns Dorito way, or 4 guns snake way. So you would say 1-4 in this case. Or you could just say, hey, 4 guns are snake. Okay. And this is a huge mistake. Generally speaking, this is a huge mistake. So these types of calls essentially take priority over whatever it was that you were trying to do that point. So, as a coach, there's only so much we can do, right? We give you the breakout and we give you the general game plan, which could be, hey, we're down a point. We've got 6 minutes left, plenty of time. We're going to get to our spots. We're going to hold the point for 30 seconds, and then we're going to try to push up the Dorito side or wherever we get a kill. Okay. And the reason why you might say the push up the Dorito side is because you identify that like their Dorito side is maybe the weaker side, given the player's skill that you're playing against. But in either case, you could say like, hey, we're down a point. We've got plenty of time. So we're going to hold it. We're going to hold the point for 30 seconds. And then we're going to push whichever side we get a kill on. Okay. Even if we get a kill, we're going to control the point for at least 30 seconds. That's the game plan. Okay. But if, for example, your game plan was, okay, we're up points, but we're still wanting to be aggressive, we're going to push the snake side. So if the game plan was, we're going to send our snake player here, we're going to have like heavy guns up off the break towards the snake side to support that. And then we're going to have like these guys just kind of do their thing, right? Pull short. Let's say this is like a safe play. Actually, even better yet, this is more of an illustration of this. So let's say, for example, this was our play. So we're trying to get our snake player into the snake off the break, and we have lots of guns to support doing that. Let's say, for example, even we have this guy shooting this way. So this is where the guns are. Now, I'm not saying that they're all like shooting this exact same spot, but like we have 3 guns snake way, we have 1 gun Dorito way to act as the safety net. We have 1 gun down, and our plan is to get somebody in the snake. Now, at the start box and the countdown, if you hear, hey, 14 or 41, whatever, you could also just say 4 gun snake way. The first thing you should do is instead of this guy going out here, he should absolutely pull short. Now, that would cause a little bit of a traffic jam, right? Because then you'd have 3 people here. So I'm not saying this is necessarily what you should do. But in either case, like, it needs to be that you do not go into the zone where people are trying to kill you. So in that case, you could audible to have it be so that, like, instead of creating a traffic jam, you just do this. So that way you can, and you as an attacker, you would say, hey, I'm going to the tower instead. And they're like, okay, cool. And then the point breaks out. And now all of a sudden you've made sure you've not crossed the line where they've got 4 guns shooting your way. And what this tells you, though, is that this guy has a choice now. He can either say, okay, there's only one guy in front of me, and he's not going to be shooting at me because he's the attacker, and he's going to be running with his gun down, or he's going to be running and gunning to like a bunker, like a corner or something. And so in this case, what you could say is, okay, I'm going to assume he's going to run and gun, which means he's going to probably run and gun to this position. And so what I'm going to do is off the break, I'm going to run here. I'm going to come out wider, and then I'm going to dive right away. And I'm going to move up to the 50. Instead, I'm going to come here, and then I'm going to wrap and essentially do the same thing we talked about last time. And so then what this allows you to do is you are punishing them based on their breakout, where you identified they had 4 guns looking one way. Now, honestly, like, they could telegraph one thing and not have it be intentional, and you could end up baiting yourself into your own death, whatever. This is just to establish this habit of making decisions based on the mistakes that you observe that your opponents are making. Because you have to do that. You have to do that moving forward. It's like people still make mistakes at pro level, like at the pro level. And if you don't understand how to make that, how to punish that mistake, then all you do is you allow your opponents to cover that mistake. You give your opponents time to be like, oh shoot, we don't have anybody shooting the snake way. Hey, fix your gun, right? But if you can recognize that immediately and then make a move off of that, that's how you play correct paintball. That's how you move up quickly to punish your teammates, or punish your opponents, excuse me. Okay, let me pause here for a second, read chat, and then I'll give you my last 2 points for Division 3, and then we'll take a pause, and then we'll cover the layout for, we'll actually cover this layout because we're not actually doing that. What's the deal with Ghost Sports and you, and why aren't you the WCPPL commentator? I think communication just kind of fell through. Like I love Ryan. He's awesome. The guy that runs the show. He, from what it sounds like, he doesn't always have the latest information on like what's going on. He had actually reached out to me, like, I think it was like October of last year, to commentate for WC. And we were negotiating on a price. I had gave him a price and was waiting to hear back on it. It sounded like his hands were tied as far as like how much he knew what their budget was until like recently. And I guess at that point they had already like hired a bunch of commentators. And so so I'm not so I didn't get hired. But hey, if you guys all watching this want me to commentate WCPPL for the entire season, which I would absolutely love to do, just message Ryan on WC's website, or just message it on the website. Just like make a post and say like, hey, we really like SVP Paintball to commentate. What do we got to do to get it happen? I've reached out to him. He's busy with setting up for the event, so I'm not sure how responsive he's going to be for the next little while, especially because he's doing, USXBL and WC and maybe other events. So just let me know. Justin. Dude, thanks, man. Thanks for the $10. Oh, that's like really quiet. Thanks, Justin. I appreciate the donation. Thank you. What's the deal with Ghost Sports? I answered that. Hey, Justin, the route from home to the Bravo up to the Utah, then diving into the Dorito Wedge was working pretty well for me the past couple weekends on this layout. That's great. I haven't actually walked the layout just yet. We'll get to that in just a minute. So there's Lone Little Blind Zone, Utah Rocket. Let's see. Yo, everyone, go do it right now. On it, I'll drop a message to him. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the thing is, like honestly, the decision maker is Mike Hinman. So if you guys want me, and I don't know how well Mike Hinman knows me at all. Like I've said hi to Mike Hinman. I know him. He knows my face. He knows that I was associated with like Utah Bro Army for a long time, which Utah Bro Army has a really good relationship with him. I just don't like, I don't assume that people know my content or know me. And so when people are trying to get me to commentate, it's like, I'm not just like a random dude, but maybe to you I am. So it's all to say that like, yeah, I would love this. I mean, if you guys want to shout him out, let him know, hey, we'd like SVP to be there for at least future events, then great. I don't know if I could make this event. It's pretty short notice. But certainly. And yeah, like I was really, the conversation broke down when I proposed a number as just a way to start the negotiation. And then like, I never heard back. And then I heard that they couldn't afford that. And then it was lower, and it was like, okay, well, I can do that number, but we never got there. Again, no shade on Ryan. I love Ryan. He's an awesome dude. I love Mike Hinman. Both guys are great. I would love to commentate. I'd even like to commentate USXBL, but that's a lot of travel, so I'm not sure I'm ready for that. So Ryan for sure needs the help, and we're way better than what they've had. You also know a lot of players too. It's wild not having at least for Premier. Your resume speaks for itself. You did Go Sports. I still do Go Sports, but yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you guys. Appreciate that. So let's talk about the last 2 points here, and then we'll pause and, like I said, talk about this layout. So, okay, the second point. The first one, recognize and punish your opponent's mistakes. That's so important in Division 3. The second point is scout your opponents at a basic level. Okay. What this really means is like in Division 3, you might start to see more consistently the same teams and the same camps, especially if you play in the bigger leagues, right? I only know the West Coast. There's lots of big leagues on the Midwest and the East Coast. But as you start to play more consistently in a series or in a league, you'll start to identify camps pretty consistently, right? For WCPPL, it's like Vegas Brawlers. It's like Hostile, it's straight shooters. Oh my gosh, there's so many Premier Division teams, but like you get the point, right? So many teams that are consistently attending events. Generally speaking, each team will have kind of a flavor of play, especially if the players don't change, right? And sometimes even if the players change, the foundation in which that team is getting coached is of a certain flavor. And so, for example, honestly, the best example I can give is actually the newbies from the NXL. And this is old information. This is not current. I don't know if they play this way still. I'm pretty sure they don't. But for the longest time, I feel like what I heard about newbies was that they played really slow paintball. And what they were substituting for speed was controlled paintball. And so what you saw was you saw them bringing out like each player, even the front players, they would bring out like 7 to 8 pods, and their back players would bring out like 10 to 12 pods. And so this tells you, hey, they're trying to slow the game down, right? They're trying to shoot a lot of paint, or they're at least coming out prepared to shoot a lot of paint. And so that tells you like, okay, this team likes to play, perhaps you could say defensive. Or you might find that in Division 3, like you've scouted a team well enough to know, oh, their Dorito player runs to this Dorito every single point. Every single point, this guy runs to this spot. Now, if you have worked on your fundamentals and everything else in every division up until this point well enough that you can say, okay, we want to target our guns here, and we have at least a reasonable chance to shoot this guy consistently, you have to be able to do this. And if you can't, then it doesn't matter. But if you are able to shoot this shot and you are able to kill them on point 1, like let's imagine you scouted them and you knew this guy's going to go here every point. He does it every first point of the series, and he does it most points. And you shoot this guy point number 1, you already know that the second point, this guy is not going here. You don't have to shoot this shot again. Now, if they did, like, let's say, for example, point 1, you shoot this guy, you win that point, okay? So it's 1-0. Now, as a coach, my first thing is, okay, we're going to shoot for the corner instead, because he's not going to go here since he already just got shot. And this happens too. I've actually coached teams to do this, and it was really, really satisfying. But you just predict this guy's going to run to the corner instead, because all he does is run. He doesn't run and gun. We've never seen him run and gun. So what he's going to do is he's going to run to the corner. Okay. Now, if he doesn't run to the corner, it's not the worst thing if he pulls short, right? We're actually okay if he pulls short because he doesn't have that many bunkers to run to anyway. But we're going to assume that he's still going to want to run wide, and he's going to run to the corner instead. Now, if you shoot this guy on point 2, as he runs to the corner, this dude is going to start panicking. Their team's going to start panicking, especially if this guy was the dude that was really contributing to them winning their points. If you kill their like main attacker, their main aggressor, because you scouted them, dude, that's how you make it. That's how you make it a camp panic really quickly in the pits. And the reason I know that is because we had that problem for a long time in Bro Army. Okay, whether that was because Sage was like the guy on our team for the longest time. Like Sage, for the longest time, was the most athletic player on our team, and he played the snake. And so when we, you guys that can actually see this, I think, maybe, in some of my barrel cam footage when we scrimmaged against Seattle Thunder, there were several points where they put 4 guns on Sage. Actually, this was during our first practice with them, so I don't think it would be on film. It is filmed. You can find that practice. But this particular example was not filmed. But there were points where Corey Field had told his team, hey, I want 4 guns to shoot at Sage. Because what would happen is Sage would get down the snake since he was so fast, and he would actually win us the point. He would shoot. And this is the time when we just started playing Division 2. So like there's no reason that we should be beating them, right? And we all know that. But he was getting down the snake quick enough. He was getting to the 50 and he was shooting everybody. And so then it was like, well, we're going to see what happens when we shoot 4 guns on them. They started to do that, and then we just started losing. And it was like, we're panicking now because the one thing that was working for us is no longer working. And well, actually that experience taught me that like, you have to be aware of who is shooting at you and who isn't. And if they're not shooting at you, heads up, you need to push quickly. Because then what started happening is Sage started to die even as he's going to his like primary bunker, but he was still getting like 3 guns on him. And so what happened was oftentimes they would send like a gun down. They would put a gun down on the Dorito side. Then again, this is a very different layout. But then their number 2 would shoot heads up, and then they'd have 3 guns shooting at Sage. And so then what I did, because I was the home player, and I actually swapped between the home and the number 2 a lot at this practice. What I did is I realized, oh, if I just win my heads up battle really quickly, I can actually push really fast right after, because this dude's still running with his gun down. And that happened all the time. And I realized that as I was playing against Seattle Thunder at the time, which is crazy because you don't ever tell yourself like I can win a gunfight against a pro player, because that's not really what it was. It was just I was coming out with a strong stream of paint that was accurate enough to get that guy to flinch even a little, and then I would take the bite. And that's the only window of time that you have. If you try to come to your bunker and you shoot at him and you don't move, well, now all of a sudden they just killed you. It's a 5v4. Right? It's a 5v4. They just killed your snake attacker and you're all sitting in the back line, right? That doesn't help. So anyway, that's a long-winded answer. I'm getting really sidetracked here. Hopefully you guys find some of this valuable. So you have to scout your opponents at a basic level. And then I'm not going to even tell you like what you should do in response to scouting them. I just really want you to start thinking about that, because that's the work of Paintball IQ. I can tell you, okay, if they play the pocket, you should maybe look to do this. If they play aggressive, maybe you should do this. But like, I'm not really teaching you how to figure that out for yourself. Just scout your opponents, identify if they play aggressive or passive, and then really do the mental work to think about what it would mean to counter that play. And that's the work of Paintball IQ. Okay. And if you're really like, but I just want to know, like my channel is full of that stuff. So just go watch. Okay. Last point for this, and then we take a break. Pay more attention to specific habits of your opponents. Okay? Now, this honestly used to be for me. This used to be a tip that I would not give until you were in Division 2, but I actually think if you don't start this until Division 2, you will be very behind and you will struggle for a long time. So this is one where you really need to start doing this in Division 3, so that way when you eventually move up to Division 2, it is expected. Because everybody in Division 2 does this, okay? In Division 2, you need to understand, or excuse me, in Division 3, you need to start paying attention to what your opponents are doing in a series, okay? When you go to scout teams in Division 3, I would discourage you from like paying attention to what a certain player is doing in that scouting. So if you go to watch a team, you know, in like prelims before you go to play them, and you're watching their corner player and he runs, and every time he runs, he dives and he starts shooting on he immediately starts challenging the shot, right? And if that's all you pay attention to as, you know, this guy's opponent, then you're going to lose the plot, right? Because it's actually possible, and this has happened to me as well. It's possible that you know exactly this guy's tendency, And all he does is he does it and he beats you still. Or let's say that you stop him. So let's say, for example, I guess the Dorito side really on this layout's the only one that I can do this on. So I apologize. This is just, we'll swap sides just to change our brain for a little. So let's say, for example, every single time this dude, when he slides into this spot, he immediately starts shooting at the home, right? Now, this isn't a great move, just so you know. This is not a great move. But let's say every time he slides and he starts doing this. Well, let's say, for example, as a home player, you're like, hey, dude, that guy, every time he gets into his bunker, he starts challenging me immediately. I'm going to shut him down. So then you get here off the break. You start, you do your shots, and then you immediately start putting paint right here. And then you notice he doesn't challenge you. And you're like, yeah, I shut him down. I'm so good. And then you get shot in the back, and there's a dude on your Dorito side. And it's like, well, what the heck? How come, what happened to you guys on the snake side? Like, that's what I mean by, like, you lose the plot, right? So it's okay when you're in the match to pay attention to what your opponents are doing, but it's really more important when you're scouting them to just see what they're doing holistically to start. In Division 2, you can add both of those together and more, but like for Division 3, you should just focus on the macro level stuff when you scout. And then when you're playing the point, this is where you can really start to put together, like, okay, every time this guy goes to the spot, like, so for example, one of the things I've told this story many times, but one of the things that I used to do as a Dorito attacker that I actually wasn't aware of, and in fact, I could find this footage right now. Let me find it. I don't even know if it was caught on film when I was doing this. Let's see. That's YouTube, film, paintball, NO Hurricane scrimmage. I don't know if it's going to be here. I don't know how well you guys can hear this. So there's me. This is against New Orleans Hurricanes before they went pro. I think this was the year before they went pro. No, this isn't an example. This is a good clip though. I'm just gonna let this clip play out for a second. I know I die here. These Hurricanes were insane, dude. They were so good. Notice how I got on my knees? So, just so you know, when I called the China and I rapped on that dude, I was the one that nailed him. It was so satisfying. Watch this one more time. Just real quick. So, not here. Not here. I'm calling the god. You can hear my voice. So, that guy, you just saw him. You just saw him right there. So, this dude right here. Right here. This guy is the guy I end up shooting. I'm pretty sure that's the dude. See, I'm getting absolutely destroyed on the outside. So this is to really illustrate this point. What they scouted me doing was two things. They would scout that I would fight out of my bunker really early, or that when I got to the Dorito 1, I would get on both of my knees. And that sucks. So oftentimes what would happen is they would either destroy the outside of this tower, never let up, because they were good, right? Like, obviously, I can't just like freely shoot at them and get them to go in. Or at least if they're making it an effort to not let me do that, it's really hard because I now usually get like 2 guns shooting at me like consistently. What they did is they started to pull up short on the Dorito side, and they'd have the Dorito guy and the number 2 attacking me, and they would almost ignore Ethan right here. This is why he's able to wrap on the inside and be pretty loosey-goosey here. But they would just destroy the outside of this bunker, so I have 2 guns on me, and I was very uncomfortable playing in that situation because then what would happen is they would control it, and then their Dorito attacker would start to move up the field slowly. And so that was the first thing they did to counter me. And then the second thing they did was that they would let me take the Doritos, or I would just take it inadvertently. And then they would notice that I would get on my knees. And the reason is because what happened is I was pulling. This is like one of the first points that I played in this scrimmage. And so I was pulling up short, like from point 1 on. And so they're like, oh, well, he's pulling short. Let's just shoot the outside of this bunker and stop him. So then I was like, okay, I really have to break out of that. So I'm just going to take the Dorito off the break. So then I started doing that. But the problem is that I would slide and I would get on my knees and then I would fight from that position because, again, my assumption is, well, they're going to just destroy the outside of my bunker, so I'm not going to do anything. Well, that, like, I remember I established a really good relationship with Mike Bianca during this event, or during this practice, because he told me that after the practice. I wish he said it to me beforehand, but he told me that and it's because we were the same division at this point, right? Like we were playing division semi-pro and they were playing semi-pro. So it's like, hey, we'll help you out, but like, I'm not going to spoil the secrets. But they found that I would get on both my knees when I got to the 3-1, which tells them I'm not in a hurry to push quickly. And so when that would happen, they would make decisions based on that information. But there's really not much else to be said about that. So like, watch what this is satisfying. Watch the snap shoot here. Boom, right there. That fight called China the God, right here. Watch right here. Got him. Dude, my snapshot back then was nasty. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it was nasty. But anyway, I'm actually playing paintball for the first time this weekend in a long time, so I'm pretty excited about that. So hopefully that helps start to understand your opponent's tendencies as you play the match. It's much easier to do this if you have either a teammate who's not playing that watches, or you have obviously a coach that's scouting this information. Honestly, when you go to like the WCPPL and you make friends, your friends will oftentimes help you. And so, you know, I like watching my friends play. And so I'm oftentimes trying to, like, if I'm playing in an event or if I'm just like randomly watching a match and I hear, oh, you guys are playing them, I actually noticed that this is what this player does. You can give them that information, but it's honestly best learned just by playing. And it's much easier to get a sense of what your opponents like to do the moment you start playing against them. So, okay. That's it. Those are my tips for divisions 5, 4, and 3. I just wanted this to be kind of somewhat unstructured and discuss my thoughts to help me iron this out. But that's it for this portion of the stream. I'm going to take just a quick little break. And when I come back, we will walk this layout and understand it. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Man. The song's good, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, let's get rid of this text. Sweet. Okay. Let's turn off this music. Sweet. Okay, well, welcome to the portion of the stream where we're going to be walking this layout. This is the NXL Portugal Invitational, first event of the year for the NXL EU. And we've kind of been walking this a little bit here and there, just understanding. Really, I've only walked the Dorito side. Doing the tips videos. Sorry, guys. I know for those of you who just watched that portion, it's like we only looked at the Dorito side. So let's walk this. I actually don't know when this layout came out, so hopefully you guys will find this somewhat valuable. But as always, the first thing we're going to do is walk the back line. So lots of open shots towards the back center, either from the bunker itself or as you run out. Interestingly, you have a really strong crossfield shot like you typically see, right? Crossfield shots in this little zone on the snake side as we continue further out. Definitely concerns of being shot. This is a teeny gap, but these gaps always seem to feel a lot wider when you're actually playing the layout. So concerns to get shot there. Also, big concern to get shot in this gap as you run wider. We just looked at that right here. Oh, excuse me, that was not the same gap, but you see that there's one on the Dorito side, and then if you run over here, there's also one on the snake side, right? As you run out to this spot, and you can blind the home from this position. So let's make sure that we have guns up. So what we're looking at here is we have really, really solid crossfield shots on either side of these positions. I'm not exactly sure where this one is. I'm pretty sure it's right here. So big zones on either side, lending itself to shooting cross, right? Okay, let's continue on the snake side as we come out wider here. Same sort of concerns. I would say that as you get wider and the only people you can see are the exact like kitty corner to you, it's really like, I mean, I guess if they're running and gunning, shooting at you, you could die here, but I wouldn't worry about that. But really strong crossfield shots again still. And then honestly, who can stop you after this first gap, after this gap and after this cross gap right here? Who can stop you? I don't think anybody. Maybe this guy, maybe the Aztec, if he runs out quickly, if he shoots his paint right here. That's so hard. That's a tough shot. But that paint would be coming in right here, right towards you right here. So I'm not so sure. That's definitely a shot, but if you run too high, you could get shot over the top by doing this, right? So like the home can do this as well, which I actually really like. I think it's super cool. Really, really cool back center, honestly. So this is also an option for you to get shot. So you could do this gap here on the Dorito side, shooting towards the snake. You could do this over the top towards the snake, and you could also do this shot here. But I would argue that's pretty tough. That shot actually kind of looks like here. So obviously, the more you pause in gaps to shoot, the more often you will be getting shot from those same positions. So just be aware of that. It's not always free. It is what it is. And then when we look at the corner here, not a true wire. Lots of opportunity to wrap or to get low and go. I would say that the home can absolutely drop a shot in on you, kill you. This tower can as well. And if somebody does get to this wedge and stops for whatever reason, they could as well. And actually the inside of this bunker. So when you get to the inside here, you could definitely drop painted on somebody to stop them from moving. Oh, actually, it would look like this. Obviously, if you don't do this, if you do this past the breakout, you stand to get shot pretty easily, but definitely an option. Okay, let's look at the Dorito side. So, we should look at these gaps again. So we have this crossfield shot that can shoot the Doritos. We have this crossfield shot as well. So you could take a knee behind the Aztec. Not a terrible spot. So you could off the break, you could, I don't know why you would, but you could shoot up the middle and then hold this crossfield shot fairly well. Again, being blinded in this position. I can already tell there looks to be a lot of bounce shots. So like, I wonder, oh, you can't actually see that. So it would be this. I wonder if those bounce into the home. I bet you they do. I bet you those shots off that Aztec bounce right into here. So be careful about that. If you guys haven't practiced this layout already, definitely look out for that. So as we run out to the, what do we call this? The Dorito side. Crossfield shot, huge gap here. Also really strong gaps here. This definitely tells me that these two are going to be fighting each other as you run off the break. So for example, if you stop here for whatever reason to get your gun up quickly, you could shoot here and then shoot here. Definitely an option, but you just have to be careful because if this guy sees that, if he runs out and sees that you haven't moved from your position, all he has to do is do this, and now all of a sudden you're stuck. You're stuck in this spot, right? Because his paint's landing right here. So you got to be careful about that. It's coming in right here. But there's definitely some crossfield action here. Home player is definitely concerned if they play over the top shooting Dorito away. So this is huge gap. This tells me that the number 2s for sure need to have their gun up. Well, it's hard to say for sure, but if you really need to practice, you know, you're off the break shooting to get that paint in, to be a threat, right? At the very least, if it's a threat, then this guy can't do this for free. But he certainly could do this off the break, right? And then if we pass this threshold, who stops us? So this is not a good enough shot to stop the snake or the Doritos. This is definitely a shot to shoot the corner. So that's there. Interestingly, if you shoot for... Oh man, these layouts are always tough. If you shoot for the corner, the guy can actually go underneath that paint. So if you were low and running and you dove, you would actually go underneath that paint if they were shooting for the corner. And so that would mean that if they want to shoot you at the Dorito 1, you'd have to shoot much lower and in front. So that's good. That just tells you those are different shots. And obviously the same is true for this spot as well. Okay. And then... let's see. If we try to go past this point, is there anybody who stops us? I mean, on the breakout, I would say no. Probably. Again, it's going to be somebody who plays in one of these gaps, is what I would say. It's going to be somebody who's floating here that would kill you. Because otherwise, like, the wedge could shoot cross field, but there's no way they're sliding here off the break and then doing this. It's just not happening. So, let's go look at the Dorito corner to see. We've done this a lot already, but not a true wire because of the brick. But you can come out to get some cheeky shots in down the wire. But if you're not careful, I wonder where this paint actually lands. So if you're kneeling down, I don't think the paint goes low enough. But if you're high or if you're too strong on your knees, you'll absolutely take a ball to the face here. So be careful about that. Okay, let's actually walk the middle really quick. Oh, I didn't actually have another drink opened already. Shouldn't be drinking this, but I've been drinking, honestly, a lot of water, and I need something different. Okay, so let's look at the middle, and then we'll take a look at the snake, and then we'll look at the Doritos. So the middle, off the break, as we established, some pretty decent crossfield shots. As we run up to this tower, let's take a look. You have like an outside shot, and maybe shooting towards somebody who would go to that wide Dorito off the break. Well, wait, did I get these backwards? I guess I don't even know if there really is a snake side. I would call this the snake side, but... you could shoot somebody as they run to the Doritos. I'm not sure that that's super helpful. Otherwise, you're really blind here, and you could even wrap on this spot to shoot towards the home and somewhere up the middle to then work your way up to these bunkers. So, pretty decent. Obviously, your opponents can do that as well. If we decide to push this other tower... Again, if we hold cross, have really great visibility, super good zone control. So we can actually, if we keep cross and they pull short, we can actually stop a lot of progression on that snake side of the field from this tower. Honestly, the biggest pressure is going to be coming from the Dorito side as they get to this Dorito 3. And if you get low and shoot, you're pretty safe from that Dorito side for a long time. The biggest challenge is going to be if they get to the snake, right? Because you can't see this guy once they cross. Once they cross this gap, it's a really tough spot to be in. You actually almost have to work your way over to this wedge to at least get out of that hot spot. Yeah, I would probably get out of that position if they pass this zone. If you Tiger one out of if you get a Lucy off the break, kill the wide guy running on the left side, then I would stay here and hold this because it's a really strong spot, but otherwise it's pretty scary. So interesting. I'm not sure. So like these are definitely the primary bunkers. As far as secondary moves, I'm not sure that the can makes sense. It's definitely not a bunker you'd play, but like, is this a bunker you use to leapfrog? Maybe you could use it to leapfrog a little bit. If the home player is on his knees a lot, like let's say, for example, let's say you were here, you shot at him and he put you in, you could definitely come here, push up here, and then he's already, he's looking snake way on this bunker. So you wrap here, you push up, and now all of a sudden, you've made it up to the wedge, right? I don't know if I'd look cross, but you could certainly look for cross kills, and then you'd come here. You'd come here and you'd start to do a lot of work in this position. One of the things that's very apparent is that because of the nature of these spots, these bunkers, like, and the ability to freely move between them, there's going to be a lot of running through happening, and a lot of running through happening from both like the threes, right? So just be careful about that. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just making sure I'm getting messages at work, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm answering them. So this means that if you want to protect your front player from, or excuse me, your number 3 from getting ran down, it's really important for you number 1s to just check off the middle every so often and wherever that looks like. So as we walk the snake and the Dorito side, we'll take a look to see where those spots are to check off. But otherwise, like, the middle is pretty straightforward. It's honestly hard to walk a middle every layout, because really the strategy that you apply is the same. Generally, the farther up the middle you go, like if you go to the 50, like what would you call this? Like essentially the 50 Dorito, or the 50 Dorito on the 50 brick on the Dorito side, we'll call it. We call this probably the Dallas, maybe. We call this the Dallas. When you get to this spot, you really don't want to be doing anything crossfield if you can help it, because all you're doing is allowing somebody to shoot you in the back. So if you get to this side, you really want to kind of play heads up, and you want to avoid the snake side as much as possible by playing into this spot. And you really want to be proactive here, right? So like if you got here and nobody saw you, you can definitely hold a trap, right? You can definitely hold a trap here. But if you have any idea, if you even suspect that people know where you're at, it's okay to be proactive, right? Because what you don't want is, you don't want to get in that spot and have somebody just run you down. Okay. So especially if, like, let's say there's a dude here and he knows, like, from this teammate or this guy, like, hey, there's a guy in that Dallas, then I don't want to just have this guy come and run me down. Or worse yet, he comes and runs me down here. Happens a lot in lower divisions, right? Okay. Same is true for the snake side. A lot of traffic jammed bunkers here in the middle that are easy to get to and easy to be lost in. So keep tabs on that. Okay. Let me just text my wife here really quick before we continue. But I'm not worried about the noise. Sorry. Okay. So, as we get to the snake side, we have this bunker to fight from, which we can shoot at. We can shoot the gap, but we can't shoot each other. So this is kind of a tough spot. Obviously, there's a huge blind up to this bunker, and even several routes that you could take to get up the field. Lots of inlets, it looks like. Lots of inlets into the snake, which is really hard to stop. So you can certainly shoot this gap to slow it down. This is presumably the twos on either side of the snake doing this job. Really difficult to stop that. If we get out to this wide bunker, we already looked at this. You kind of completely isolated from each other, heads up. But then you have some middle bunkers to worry about. You have the tower, the home, the wedge. If they stop there and shot at you, I don't know why they would. And you do also have some crossfield shots. So if off the break you make a move quickly, not an issue. But otherwise, you can't just like get here and crawl, because you will have paint coming in on you. So you will have to. What I oftentimes like to do, you look at how much you're hidden right here. So like you can't really see it. Let's do it from this perspective and get down a little bit better. So in this position, if you look here, you'll notice that like so much of my inside gaps are blocked when I do this. And so you can get a lot of intel by playing this spot on the bunker and just really scanning for people in this position. I can't really do that here, but you get the idea. So, options for moving up the field are definitely here, crawling. I would imagine this is a pretty common route that people will take. So that means you just need to be aware of it and put paint that direction as well. And then if we look at this Dorito spot, nothing cross there. A gap you could hold, and you could shoot the home. I don't really think there's any value here in shooting inside. Yeah, I don't think there's any value here. This is one where if you heard like, let's say your teammate was here and you heard that there was a guy in that wedge that I'm shooting at, this is one where you could definitely protect him. So like if he was looking, for example, if he was here looking your way towards the snake stuff, you could be in this position and you could say like, hey, I've got you on the inside or whatever. And obviously your teammates on this side shouldn't be looking in the snake way, but this can absolutely be a way that you protect your guy. So that's good. If we come here, so again, I don't see any value in stopping at this bunker. You can't really do anything. I mean, it protects you from getting run down, I'll say. So if you go here, you notice that there's a guy in the 50 and it's kind of getting sketch. You can definitely back up here and play this spot to bait him. That's a great retreat. But like, I don't think as a default, it's a good idea to come here because you would want to, maybe as a support player, maybe as a number 2. We should look at where the number 2 should be. Definitely not here. The number 2 can't see anything there. The 3 can't really see anything here. You can't see anything here, and you can't really see anything here. So the number 2 is either going to be in this tower. Is there anything cross? Kind of. Yeah, I mean, not kind of. This is a strong cross shot. It just sucks to be, this is a crappy position to be in. Because if you're fighting this dude, it's either you or him, and he has the ability to hide from you. So I would actually wonder if the number 2 goes to this spot, weirdly enough. Like, let's say this number 2 gets here. He has a lot of visibility on the Dorito side, and he can shoot these guys. And then what you end up having is somebody in this position, maybe. Not so sure yet. We'll figure that out maybe a little bit more as we walk the field and look at layouts or breakouts and stuff. So if we come here over to the snake, it's pretty traditional wire. If we wrap, what gap is that? Inside Aztec, nothing really. You have a wedge you could shoot. Not a lot of people here. So then the question is, do you dive over? I can't do that in this game. So if you end up, what you could do, I guess, is you could have one guy get here, the other dude get here, and then when you decide to push, this guy comes around, essentially becomes the attacker, and then this guy like holds the wire until he gets set up. And then depending on what happens, they just swap. Because the gaps, you have really good gaps. You just don't have the ability to threaten a lot of people in their bunkers, which is tough. So there was no inside kills for free, right? Just gaps that you're holding. You can pressure that can really good from this spot, though. This is a really good spot to pressure that can. And then if you get into this position, you can control, interestingly, you can control the corner. So if people are using the corner a lot to get up the snake, this is a good bunker to get to. Because you can really stop the corner from making those moves. The challenge is that you're gonna have to essentially shoot directly at that player who could always snap you out, and that's always a risk with these wedges, as you kind of have to stay posted, and they're not great angles. Crossfield stuff, same kind of angles, really. Like those Dorito and Aztec are just going to get shot so much, but if you get out of those spots, it's really, really hard to stop anything. Assuming we move up to this position, actually, I would say your first kill is definitely the Dorito and probably the Aztec. And if they're at the tower too. So you get a really nice 3-pack or shots on 3 different bunkers here. I don't think you kill the Dorito in front of that guy, but I think you have some really decent shots to kill people in these positions. What's up? What's up, Illegal Supreme? How are you? So definitely look on the inside to start, and you also want to be careful at this Dorito guy right here as well. Like if you get to this position, I would shoot here, and then I would shoot these people if I could. Let's see what the wraps look like. So I guess the only challenge with that original bunker we looked at, the wedge back here to look at the 50, is that this guy's snapping at the same spot regardless, right? If you get to this position and you want to shoot the Aztec, because the only people that are wide is that guy, then he's essentially shooting at the same spot as where you're holding. So I don't think there's really a lot of value to be there, especially because, as we were discovering, the Aztec can do the same thing from this position, right? He's good right here. So no reason to go to the wedge and then hold this angle. I guess you could do it if you were stuck in the snake, though. Doing well, man. Just finishing up work for the day. Hope your day's going well. It is. It's going pretty good. It's just kind of getting hot, which I actually really like. You have gaps. I would not hold gaps here. You also have the same shots you had before, but this is where you're going to want to sneak up. You definitely kill the can here. You kill the can, and then this is where you come up over the top and dominate people. Like if there's a guy in the back center still, that's the route I would take. So interesting. Once you pass the 50, I'm not going to walk the layout. Like you guys should walk it to figure that out. So, okay, let's look at the Dorito side now. We already looked at the middle. So as we come out to this bunker here, if we stay cross, we actually don't have great visibility. If we are cross and we play back, we can still hold the same angles that we were holding earlier, which is okay, but we're a little bit more exposed to the delta over there, that Dorito corner, which isn't great. So we really can't do this for too long. We could play this spot maybe. But yeah, the moment you get in your bunker, you don't have as good of angles. You still have some angles, right? This is still an angle you have. I wouldn't say that's an angle, but you definitely can shoot on the outside of the Aztec. This is assuming we're off the break still. Interesting. Okay. The heads up battle, pretty straightforward. You can't ignore each other, so you definitely can see each other. And interestingly, you can if you get put in, you can control that gap on the outside for a second before you let go. So that's kind of nice. If we go out to the corner, we already kind of looked at this, but be careful about the wire. If you wrap, you do have the can. These two bunkers are going to get shot a lot because so many people can see these bunkers. So that's tough, like, right? So right now I have the can that can shoot me. I have the wedge that can shoot me. I have the home. You can't really see it, but I have the home that can shoot me and the tower. And I have this guy, the 50 brick on the Dorito side, or yeah, the Dorito side that can shoot me if I tried to make a move. And interestingly, this is the same. This is one of a similar conundrum that you had in the layout that we were just watching with the New Orleans Hurricanes. Oh, I closed the video, but and then you obviously have snake cross stuff, right? So we also have the 50 that can shoot us. We have this wedge that can shoot us, that mini wedge, and the mini W. That's a lot of bunkers. It's a lot of bunkers to shoot this guy. I would say that if your opponents are using this bunker to leapfrog into the Doritos, like, just try to pick up on that and just figure out, like, which gun should be doing that, right? You don't want to leave it to the call. Like, you don't want to say, okay, you know, we got to be careful about the Delta guy. He pushes up the Doritos quickly. What you want to say is, okay, you in this spot, if you hear Delta, you need to shoot that shot, or you need to be shooting that shot the whole time, right? If we go to this Aztec here, I actually really like this angle here. So the Aztec, I would say that you can see everything, really. Even though there's this little beam right here, that beam really only stops people from, not only stops you from seeing if people go from here to here, which you would definitely want to be careful about. So what I can see happening a lot is actually a lot of leapfrogging in a sense. So what would happen is you could have situations in where are we right now? We're in the corner? No, we're in the Aztec. So I can see situations in which you have like this kind of setup, and then off the break, this guy goes here and then starts to wrap. And then all of a sudden you just surprise these two people, right? So if, for example, this guy comes here, he slides, pushes up, and then wraps right here, all of a sudden, boom, you've got, oh, it's actually right here. Oh, that's right. I don't know why I'm being silly. You can shoot this gap here, or you can fade out and then surprise this guy. So you just got to be really careful. If you don't, like, I wouldn't hold the same angle for too long. I would really try to find that 50 snake player as he moves up. So interesting. As far as getting out of this position, it's a heads up gunfight, and then anybody that can stop you is going to be the home and the tower. You're good. I'm not worried about the sound. You want my phone? Oh, I can be interrupted. I'm just doing a casual live stream. This is a little camera thing. I told him you were in a meeting, but I checked to see if he can come and show you. My son's gonna come show me something on his camera really quick, but we'll keep going until, yeah.
Here's my camera.
What?
Guess what?
What?
It was the other day at preschool, but I forgot to show you. When you press this button and look inside there.
Okay, we're gonna do this. Oh, what? Look at that. Look at all those animals. That's awesome. Thanks for showing me. Oh, do you have one more thing to show me?
Yeah.
Okay. Show me one more thing, and then I gotta finish this video that I'm doing.
Today, this is a surprise that I got from the doctor.
Okay, show me. Oh, that's right, because you went to the dentist. Show me. Oh, what? You got a heart ring. Hi, Hattie. You got a heart ring. Hey.
She got two.
Wow.
Actually, I got 2 and she got 1 since I was the one that got. But I got a bouncy ball.
You did.
But the other one's in the car.
All right, kiddo. Thanks for showing me. I'll be done in just a minute, and then we can.
This?
This is just a game that I'm playing, and I'm streaming for some people and showing them how to play paintball. So I'll be done in just a minute, and then we can come. I can come say hi. Okay. So as we continue on the Dorito side, what we were trying to figure out is that's right, the gaps. So big one as we move from from here to here is going to be that tower, the home, and then this guy if he surprises us at the 50, as well as the wedge. I would suspect that people do oftentimes stop at the wedge to play from this position. Interestingly, like it's not super great. You can stop them from the outside. It's not super great. So if you get put in, they could quickly go. But otherwise, like your response could be to come here and then further hold this outside gap. So something to watch out for. Man, there's so many crossfield shots in on the Doritos. I feel like it's going to be really, really tough to play this Dorito side. Because, like, look at that Aztec. Look at that Aztec crossfield shot towards you. If we get to this first Dorito, no inside kills. If we go to the second Dorito, let's see. We might be able to surprise the wedge if for whatever reason they're doing something on the inside. This is where we could threaten the snake, either the snake 50 or the snake 2, we'll call it. I don't know if that's the snake 2 or not, actually. And then we could shoot crossfield here towards the corner, hold big gaps. Man, honestly, this layout looks really tough. It looks fun, but it looks really tough. So if we come up to this 50 here, we can shoot towards the Dorito side. That Dorito bunker is really solid, I would say. That snake side Dorito bunker is like an anchor bunker. I feel like you can survive so much there. You can definitely shoot crossfield towards that snake 2 we talked about earlier. We'll call that maybe the snake 3, actually. You can shoot towards the Dorito, the mini W, which you're not going to hurt at all. And you're not going to hurt that guy. You're going to probably get a kill here, or you're going to make that guy panic. So not a free kill, but definitely something to look out for as you get to this spot. I wouldn't even bother wrapping even further because you're not going to see anything of value here. So then when you get to this 50, it's pretty basic to wrap. Honestly, that home bunker it's a solid bunker to survive in. It doesn't seem to be a very solid bunker to stop movement, though. Let's just double check here really quick. Like you could stop the outside move from the Dorito up the Doritos, right? We've established that. So you can shoot that gap. Can't stop anything else on the Doritos. And on the snake side, you could shoot on the outside of the snake as well into the Doritos. But that's it, right? Unless I'm missing something. Like you could do maybe some over the top stuff. You get a lot of really good intel from here, though, I will say. You get some really good intel. So let's take a look at breakouts then really quickly, and then we'll finish. So a lot of solid crossfield stuff off the break. Lots of really good crossfield gaps. I would say this is going to be the bread and butter of a lot of breakouts, which means that as it's, off the break, instead of like, let's say, for example, this is where they are. Instead of doing that all the time, like immediately shooting these gaps, you could alternatively, as you come out, shoot over the top back towards these players as your first few balls, and then you shoot on the outside. So definitely look to do that. I would say probably as a default, there's going to be a lot of crossfield shots, and I would probably anticipate that both these players shoot crossfield off the break. Okay. Now there are ways in which you could punish that. So for example, the number 1 off the break could shoot here. You could have 2 people shooting this. So for example, you could have both, your 2 and 3 on either side shooting over the top towards those middle players. That's also an option. Because that's it's almost like the turret position, right? I wouldn't be surprised if we see that in this event. Really, really solid guns off the break towards these players. I think as far as the gaps, it looks to be that those are the biggest gaps that you have to get past as you're running out to these spots. So the crazy thing is, for example, if nobody is here and they're not shooting at you, look at how much real estate you can take. From this position, assuming they're not at the tower shooting you as well, I guess that's a lot of assumptions here. But even if, like, for example, you come here, right? You come here, you get low, and then you dive. Again, assuming there's no crossfield shot, then you can get up to the 50. So that tells me these crossfield shots are super, super important. I would anticipate that because of that, what you'll see is a lot of like run out and then gun pull up. I'm not sure how often we'll see people like literally just diving into spots with their gun down. Oh, interesting. You could actually come out here too. So you could come here. Oh, that's really tough actually. This is this is a shot too. You could off the break come here. That's also an option. That would kill anybody sliding into those spots. So, man, lots of options, honestly. It's hard to give you guys a ton of breakouts here, but I'll just call out a few things. So, I feel like a lot of the play action is going to be determined by these two gaps and honestly what happens off the box. So, depending on where your guns are, you could craft game plans around that, but it seems to be that if you cross these gaps right here, that you're actually pretty good to do a lot after that. So as soon as you cross this threshold and you're alive, there's honestly so many bunkers you could go to. I think these two bunkers, where are they? These two right here are going to take a lot of heat. I think these bunkers are going to get shot a ton. So the quicker you can get out of these positions, the better. So the quicker you can get to this spot or even this spot, the better. I feel like these are the two safe bunkers on the Dorito side. And honestly, this bunker right here is a really, really solid snake bunker. As far as where the support players go on either side of the field, that's a little tough, to be honest, because it feels like a lot of the support is going to be coming from these towers cross field still. So I feel like off the break, what's going to happen is people are going to shoot from here, and then they're going to come up to these bunkers and support. I don't know if it makes sense to have both of these bunkers filled off the break because you're really just so far up the field that it can be kind of sketchy. But I think an ideal situation is to have somebody in this position, like one of your players here, your number 2 here, your number 3 here maybe, your number 2, or you can do your 3 back here and your 2's here, and then your number 1 in like these 2 spots. I think this is an ideal situation. So you do have somewhat of like a front line established. But I don't think what you don't want is you don't want somebody here, 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 and here. I think this is pretty bad. So it's okay to develop into these positions, but I would just be very careful. Like if you're not making a game, if you haven't made a game plan to get your teammates up here quickly, try not to put your 2 support players here fast. I would say, obviously, anything's possible in paintball, so it's possible for you to go there and actually get kills or be the only thing that's stopping a push. Because as we've established, these guys heads up have a lot of visibility. They have a lot of visibility on what's going on in front of them. So these guys are going to be a lot of the control that happens on the field. But it just means that, yeah, there's a lot of ways you can deny people getting into here from these crossfield gaps that we established already. Lots of shots that can come in to stop those people from moving or off the break, which means what's probably going to happen still is you're probably going to see a lot of breakouts that look like this, quite honestly. And then these 2 players are going to go here, I think. So this gives a fair bit of... and honestly, the nice thing about these 2 spots, I would say, is that these are decent read and react spots. So if, for example, off the break, you're like, hey, your job is to shoot cross field and then get into the Aztec, and you come here, you shoot here and then you shoot here, and let's say you get 1 kill on that side of the field, then you can definitely come here. Oh, we can't actually control crossfield. I don't know why I thought you could. It's just heads up. Oh, that's what it is. It is heads up. Okay. But if you get here, like let's say for example you kill the number 2 and the number 1 is somewhere over here. Well, that number 1 on the Dorito side for a while cannot see you. So now all you have to do is you have to just wrap on the middle to see what's going on. This is in the breakout, and then all you have to do is come here, play this spot for a second, wrap, and then come to this position, and all of a sudden, boom, right? You could also alternatively look this way, but you could come here, bully the number 1. If let's say he's in the corner. Let's say he's in the corner and you've got paint coming from behind you from this dude. So this is the positioning that you have. Let's say what do we say? Where are we? Sorry, I'm so lost. So you are here. And you got a teammate behind you, and he's shooting the corner, and that's where the guy is, then this gives you an opportunity to wrap and push into their side. So that would be, okay, he's got the job. I'm going to wrap. The home can't see me on this side. I'm going to wrap even further, and all of a sudden I'm creeping up, looking for this gap here. I'm playing this position, and then when you get here, you're not playing this spot anymore. When you get here, you're looking for kills. And given the fact that this guy is like pretty dug in, the home player is now gonna have seen you. Your first thing is going to be to look for kills cross field as fast as possible, and then hopefully you don't just throw your body away through a run through. But alternatively, you can snap, get this guy to flinch for a second, and then shoot that run and gun. Lots of things you can do here, but you got to get the idea, right? So it seems pretty, aside from like the way the support players help, it seems to be a pretty straightforward layout. The biggest challenge I think is going to be for a lot of people to stop these inlets into spots. Sorry, that's a baby. I'm almost done here, guys. That's going to be a really tough spot to filter in and like stop people from going. And as you can see, the angles are coming cross field to do that. That's where those shots are coming in from. So anyway, not sure how helpful that is. Hopefully it gives you some kind of insight. I know people have said they've practiced this layout already, but I just wanted to cover it. I've put on my calendar a lot of different leagues layout drops, and so I'm trying to be more proactive about covering a lot more leagues this year. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and if so, please leave a comment down below saying so, and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys next time.